We're ready to start our panel talk on craftsmanship and watchmaking, which is a very, very broad topic. So I'm glad I have three such wonderful people to discuss this with today. I'd like to introduce Serge Michel, co-founder of ARMIN STROM. Lorenzo Maillard, watch expert, consultant, and kind of an influencer, I'd say. Comes from a very long line of watchmaking interested professionals in Switzerland. And Matthias Stotz, the CEO of Tutima Glashütte, also a very long time. All three of you actually were almost pretty much born into watchmaking. So this is, these are the people we need to be talking to. Lots of experience. So today's topic is craftsmanship. And I want to start out with a quote by Richard Sennett, who wrote in The Craftsman, "Craftsmanship is the basic human impulse to do a job well for its own sake." Now, in Switzerland and in Germany, we often take that as an impulse, but how true do you find this to be in watchmaking? Serge, let's start with you.
I think it's a very good quote. Really, I really think it is. When it comes to watchmaking, there's a lot about craftsmanship for me and for the brand ARMIN STROM in general. In the history of watchmaking, craftsmanship has always been a very important topic to judge, at the end, to judge the quality of a movement, of a caliber of a watch. So yes, I fully agree with that quote. Yeah.
What about you, Lorenzo?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, well, first of all, thank you for having us here, and thank you, INHORGENTA, as well, for organizing this. And I absolutely agree. I think even more nowadays, resonating with the new audiences, craftsmanship is key for watchmaking. It's the differentiating factor that is probably the most important one to make this industry thrive and survive as well. So yeah, definitely central to the industry.
That's an interesting aspect. We'll come back to this. Herr Stotz, Matthias?
Yeah. So watchmaking is the most important thing, or the love for craftsmanship is the most important thing for our industry, because today you don't need the mechanical movements, but all the things that people love is craftsmanship. So what's the people doing with their hands behind? What's the real value? I think we a little bit forgot to talk about it. So I'm very thankful to the INHORGENTA that we have a stage to speak about our most basic roots of the success of the watch business during the last decades.
So maybe before we dive any deeper, we just heard, if anyone was here for the talk that went on before us, a little bit about what goes into Swiss craftsmanship, what are the individual details. But in the luxury watch industry, this word might have a lot of different meaning. How might we define the word craftsmanship today as it stands? Let's start here again with Herrn Stotz.
So I think the point of view of craftsmanship depends on the company, how they do craftsmanship. So craftsmanship can be a duty. For example, for us at Glashütte, we have a regulation. We are not free. What is the minimum we have to do? So there's a regulation that you have a percentage you have to fulfill. So that's the duty. On the other side, with our minute repeater or with our own chronograph, so we are totally free what we are doing, so we can put full of love in it. Then it depends how you want to celebrate and on what kind of level you want to do it. So I think that's very, very individual. And of course, you have always to explain exactly why you are doing this, and you have to make it transparent.
Lorenzo?
Yeah, I agree. There's so many different ways to describe craftsmanship. One that I find interesting, and it might be a bit cliche, but it's time, definitely time. Even more nowadays, again, to relate back to what I was saying before, it's so important to take the time. Craftsmanship wouldn't exist with the luxury of time, and that's crucial for the industry, actually taking the time, going into the details. That's probably the most important part of craftsmanship, because you can spread the word craftsmanship in many different campaigns and so on. But if you don't really take the time, then it's just a marketing twist, I would say.
And Serge, I mean, for you, it probably has a fully different meaning, because your small company makes so much of its own components.
I think there's another dimension in time, for sure. 100% is one of the dimensions, but it's the human being at the end as well. So there's the person, the talent at the end who works at the single part of a watch. So you have to imagine a part, sometimes they work for 4 hours on one part to make the finishing, the decoration on one single movement part. And for me, it's the talent, the human being who sits there, concentrates, takes the time, but has the skills to make it on that certain level. And at the end, this is the appreciation I think we have from the brand and the collectors have today. When they dive into the movement, they appreciate all the finishings of this particular craftsmanship. It's the human touch behind which makes the difference.
Human touch is a good word. So for some companies, it's only a touch. For the other, it's inspiration. And if you look back on the word manufacture, so normally it has to be done manually by your hand, but this word was spread so wide in our industry. So for some companies, it's important that you have to know how I could make it with my hands, and that's enough to be a manufacturing company. The next one do is fully automated, and the other ones do it really manually. So I think also this is not a word you can really be safe or trust. So I always invite the people, go to the company, visit the workshops, have a closer look, talk with the watchmakers, the people who are behind, look and feel what you see, and then you can select.
Yeah, and actually, it's interesting the history of all this hand finishing. It was just a reason why to do it. Before, I mean, we made the parts by hand, and then it was not a decoration. It was make the part as good that they can be assembled. And then it changed in history in the 19th century, end of 18th, 19th century. It started to be a craftsmanship when people are starting to talk about decoration as a craftsmanship, not just the purpose of making a watch. And today, I think that's the only differentiation we have to the digital watch. I mean, it's, for me, of course, one is innovation in watchmaking, perfectionism, in time accuracy, but at the end, why spending a certain amount of money? It's because of somebody was working, investing a lot of hours into the finishing and the decoration of a watch. Yeah.
And it's also, to add to what you just said, it's also preserving the techniques, preserving the knowledge, and passing it to the next generation. This is definitely key for craftsmanship, because we can always evolve, but sometimes we forget where we come from and what makes this industry and these watches so special. Doesn't mean that the other types of watches that are a bit more maybe machine-made, I would say, are not interested. But we need to also focus on how we did things differently back then and with our hands. And that's what you were mentioning as well. It's part of the industry to make sure that we keep these knowledge and pass it on to the next generation. And sometimes upgrade it, make some changes as well, but also always relate back to our history in watchmaking.
And craftsmanship is not only about industry. So if you make a little bit journey to the history, looking back 200 years, so watchmakers who are able to make a precise component or movement look like Harrison. So it was really something special. Artists, engineers. That was watchmaking in the past. Then, of course, it was an industrial product everybody wants to have, so you have a big industrialization. Then with the quartz crisis, it was nearly disappeared. Then it started again as craftsmanship became more and more educated profession and more machinery. And then we add on some handwork on already precise components coming from the machine. Sometimes the decoration makes the parts not better, they make it more nice. So and today again, everything is very well educated and you can find all complications in combination. So it's a little bit also an overload of craftsmanship you cannot understand. And if you look to the historical ones, I always look at repairs and see how the people make this great craftsmanship 200 years before. And then you can discuss with the watchmakers, how would you make it? What was the old skill behind? I think that's also a part which could be preserved in the museums, in the watchmaker schools, that we don't forget the real craftsmanship with your own hands, instead of sitting in front of your 3D AutoSketch program, and at the end there's a machine, and then you make only a little bit chamfering. So I think the real craftsmanship in watchmaking is a special world, and that's the fascinating profession to be a watchmaker, that you can learn your whole life and you will never be at the end.
Interesting, and I kind of figured the conversation would head this way. Interesting that you all mentioned that it must be, most of it must be handmade to be called craftsmanship. In today's world of high watchmaking, the machine is very, very important. We need the machine to make precision parts. And then what happens after that is most of it's done by hand. But does that machine-made aspect factor into the word craftsmanship at all? I mean, I think that's an interesting aspect to take into account, especially for a company like Tutima. When I think about the two levels of watchmaking that are done there. But even you, Serge.
I think yes. I think we have possibility with today's CNC machines, and even with how to design a watch movement. We already think of what is going to be the finishing on the certain part. So it's not just, especially with a brand like ARMIN STROM, where we show all the parts. It's about open worked. So we design the movement, the caliber. We produce the parts of the caliber in order to be perfectly handcrafted and hand decorated. So yes, there is an aspect. I think we can even do more complex finishings because of the possibilities we have with the production of the parts.
Yeah, exactly.
But there is an influence,
Yeah, I would say that.
Absolutely, both can definitely work together. And I think what is interesting about craftsmanship is also the fact that the spirit behind it. So if a watchmaker does something with his hand, maybe he wouldn't reach the level of precision, and sometimes he does. Sometimes he overpasses also the level of machine precision. But even if he doesn't do it, I think the spirit is most important. His spirit is, we all try to do something with our hand that matches something that is, let's say, 3D made or made by a computer. And that's the spirit of watchmaking. It's definitely core to the product. It's the spirit of the watchmaker who tries his best, retries, fails, redo stuff to make sure that for himself and for the company he works with, the component he produces is the best one he could do. And that's the spirit, to match the technicality that the machine could do, but with your own hand. This is really interesting, I think, and it really adds value to the watch at the end of the day.
Without a doubt. I'm thinking too about, we were talking this morning about dials, how, many brands use hand guilloche dials and handmade, hand-worked dials. Many brands use machine pressed dials that look like guilloche to produce other patterns or more perfect patterns, or even in some cases reduce the price of a watch. You have the same optics, but with less handwork in it, it will cost a few thousand less. And is there any less craftsmanship in that? Because you still need to plan what the overall design will be, how the machine will press the dial, et cetera, et cetera. I believe that all of it fits into this word craftsmanship somewhere, even if it's not generally emphasized in materials. How do you feel about that?
I think the most important thing is that if you select a handcrafted component, you have to make it transparent. The people have to understand. If you want to deliver a craftsmanship part, then the other person have to exactly to understand what is craftsmanship, what is machinery, and what is the mixture. Not everybody can afford a watch for 100,000 euro. Others want to have also craftsmanship, but less than 10,000 or 50,000. And then you have to make the dose what you want to have in your finish, in your style, in your material. If you want to make the plates of 80 karat gold, or you make it from brass, or anyway. So you have to select the right mixture of the things you want to show. And I think that the last point, I agree with you that the craftsmanship already starts in the spirit. Also look at art. Today it's totally common that a video artist also is reputed. It's not only about painting like we did it 200 years ago, so everything developed further. And I was always impressed by craftsmanship if people think about a new solution. And if it's especially very simple, simple, clever, and to show that the background behind and using the skills bringing you to perfect aim or to higher precision or less components. I think that's the thing of craftsmanship, which is more important than the machinery or something like that. So the things we always can explore and find, and I'm always happy to find something new. Not more complicated, not more expensive. Craftsmanship is not the price tag. It's the spirit behind.
Yeah, it's trying to do your best with the abilities that you have. And it's fun because now we think craftsmanship is necessarily done by hand, which is not necessarily true. If you go back in history as well, back then they were working with the tools they had. They were not, we're going to do everything by hand. It's just they used machine when they could, and they finished it sometimes with their hand because it was better. And that's just, again, it's a spirit. It's the spirit of watchmaking.
Oh, that's a good way to define that. I guess I never. That's a very succinct way to define that. Have you pre-thought about this? Okay. As we just heard, there are many different approaches to reach craftsmanship in watchmaking. But I would say the products that are the result of thinking about this and planning this are always filled with craftsmanship. Now, your two companies, I find, are on the extreme and different ends of the spectrum when we look at size and goals and so on and so forth. And I find this an extremely interesting space to explore in between. So, Serge, I'm going to start with you. Your company is quite small, but very dense, I want to say, densely packed with creativity, but also engineering. And the small amount of craftsmen that work there really seem to output a lot, in my opinion. It's an incredible thing that you do. Do you actively think about this when you're going into it, or when you include our planning things or planning new things? I'm thinking specifically, several years ago, you brought out a new type of finish. I can't remember the name. You'll have to help me with the name of this finish, but it looked like just scribbling in a way. It just didn't.
Or like scratching.
Yeah, the scratching. Yeah. It was that.
I think we call it scratching.
Yeah, and it was so unique. I had never seen anyone do that before, and I thought, wow, that is super cool to be able to think up something so new from such a traditional art. So, when you're planning your watches, what ideal of craftsmanship goes into it?
I think we talk to our watchmakers and to our decoration team. There's a lot of influence from them in the parts when it comes to finishing. So there's, I think it's a great team. First of all, we need to have. They really have the passion for it. And if somebody brings in the new idea, we talk about it. Sometimes we realize it, like that's scratching, or sometimes we don't, because it's probably not going to match the overall aesthetic of the watch. But again, I think what we do at ARMIN STROM is almost like, I would call it a bit fetish. There's just a few people they really appreciate. They take the loop and they look at the part. It's on an extreme level. So that's why I think craftsmanship, it's all craftsmanship. Even if you do a basic craftsmanship or you go to a level as we do, and we spend a few hours for one part. But again, it's the people behind. They have a big influence on the final aesthetics of a movement. It's not just Claude and myself. We say it needs to be like this. There's really a team behind. They are creative, and we need them to be creative. We want them to be creative.
Yeah, I find your team fascinating. Actually, I seem to recall there were some employees that you had brought over from Glashütte even.
There's more than one, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then when we turn to the way that Tutima approaches things, it's a fascinating story. I mean, this is a very, very German story, Tutima, with a long history and how they got to where they are, and in a very technical way. Coming back in the 80s big with titanium, and then the wall fell 25 years later, and to rebuild in Glashütte where they hadn't been in half a century, to make really, really high-end products. Oh, I'm just getting goosebumps thinking about it. and I love the idea of both of these levels of craftsmanship that exist at Tutima, and with a relatively big team, because there's even more than one production site. There's 2 or 3, if I'm not mistaken. in total, but of course we're going to talk about Tutima Glashütte mostly here. What is the approach there? Do you have local craftsmanship fully in mind every time you plan new products?
So the history of a brand always gives a little bit away you have to go. And Tutima has an extraordinary story because when Tutima was founded, it was the 20th of the last century. The situation was very bad for watchmaking. So there were a little bit poor times. We had the pocket watches, which are highly developed, and they're coming from the Swiss markets, the smaller wristwatch movements. And the wristwatch movements are very dangerous in these days. The people do not trust this new technology. It was too small. So it's more difficult to produce it, less precise. The balance is smaller. And then the biggest problem, the watch is not protected under your jacket. It's on the wrist, so you have dust, you have humidity, you have to move, and all the things. So the people at the region of Glashütte, they are scared. It's the same at the Black Forest. The industry was slow, and they needed some time to believe in this new product. Like today, we have smartwatches or other things, new technologies. It was exactly the thing during the foundation. And Tutima, the founder, Dr. Ernst Kurz, he believed that fine watchmaking can also be done on a wristwatch. And the name Tutima stands for protection. So if you do craftsmanship, it's a pity if you give it to the environment, and this can be damaged, so you have to protect. And so he created the name Tutima to protect the finest version of wristwatch movements. So it's exactly the same Hans Wilsdorf, the German watchmaker, does with the oyster. He protects craftsmanship. So that's the first spirit. And then later on, of course, we get in a situation in front of the Second World War, the pilot watches have been needed. So they selected the best ones. So Tutima became a pilot's watch. And then, of course, after the war, Tutima disappeared first and moved from the eastern part to Germany. Yeah, and then we have all the situation. Nobody cares about craftsmanship. The people cares about size, thickness, accuracy, quartz watches. That was the new way of watchmaking. Far away from craftsmanship we love today. And then again, mechanical watching is coming again, the requirements from the armies, and again, since '84, we are back on the pilot's wrist. And then something really, really valuable happened in Germany, that we have the reunification, and you have Geneva, you have Vienna, you have your Lausanne, you have all your German centers of fine watchmaking, but Glashütte was our treasure in Germany, and it was covered. And so we have been very happy that the home of Tutima was realistic, reachable again. So and that was the next step. If you go to Glashütte, you need craftsmanship there, and you have to adapt again to this spirit. And that's the reason why we have such a wide program, from the official NATO pilot's watch, on the other hand side, to a minute repeater. So it's an incredible spread. But it's about our history. And now we have to combine these different styles, and the requirements are totally different on this wrist, like on this. Yeah, I think so. The way of craftsmanship is also in your DNA, where you are coming from and where you want to go to.
Did you have a question, Lorenzo?
No. I was relating to what you were saying, because as a vintage watch lover, I remember looking at vintage Tutima chronographs.
Yes.
Pilot watches from the Second World War, and I was impressed that you had your own chronograph caliber back then, and you reproduced one that is, I mean, not the exact same, but similar. Or and I found it really interesting, this lineage. And as a Swiss, I was really impressed to see also other countries really investing in the manufacturer calibers and manually wind chronograph. It's pretty rare nowadays. So I was really impressed by the fact that you relaunched a manually wound chronograph made in Germany, and it relates back to this craftsmanship idea of what did we do in the past? How can we make it nowadays still interesting for our customers, and I think you managed to do it perfectly.
So can craftsmanship be equated with creativity?
It goes together for sure. I think creativity is the drive, and then craftsmanship is just the way you do it. I would say.
Oh, another piece of gold nugget there. That was good. So maybe a last little push from me before we open up for questions. But another quote from the Richard Sennett book, which is excellent, by the way. He said, the better your technique, the more impossible your standards. And that's a really hard thing to grasp. But when I look at what your company produces, what ARMIN STROM produces, Serge, I know exactly what he's talking about. How hard do you have to fight with yourselves not to be perfectionist?
That's a good question. I mean, it's down to the people. So if they like to spend hours and hours, sometimes you have to limit them, of course. Just so I think it's at the end it comes down to the time we agree spending on finishing in a movement. When we started doing hand craftsmanship as we do it today, we didn't have that limit. We were happy to sell a watch, so we just spent time and time and time. Now orders are coming in quite regularly, and we need to bring in a certain kind of industrialization. Is definitely not the right word, but it goes more into the direction of producing more than 10 watches a month. So and then of course we need to see how do we bring down this power. So how do we bring down the power to the floor, to each and every person, to finish on the same quality, same level of quality, the individual parts for the watch. Yeah. So there's some compromises, but I think we have very little space to go into compromises at ARMIN STROM, at least. Yeah.
I would say that's probably also sort of a truth at Tutima, especially in the higher end of the Tutima Glashütte line, where we're talking about the minute repeater or the chronostop or these tempo stop, Entschuldigung, these really specialties that you can't find anywhere else, especially in Germany. Do you have the same problem?
Of course, you have to select every production and you have to find the right people. You have to set the right people on the right desk. So people who love to bend an overcoil of a Breguet hairspring, if you advise him, so tomorrow you are responsible for hand setting, I think he will disappear. So you always have to find out what is the skill, how you can train, whereas the end of the line. I think the most important thing is that human beings will be doing the job they love. They can be also quicker, better, and improve, and not do something which is a little bit more attractive, and they're not able to do that. I think you really have to select the people and to educate to the right lines, to combine, and I think that's a challenge also in Switzerland and in Germany, to find and to educate enough workers for this beautiful job. So for me, it's one of the most popular and interesting jobs in the world. But you have to give the love for this work to them. So we have here the schools who do that. We are on stage. So I'm also thankful that we always can support. But it's important that you use technology and to add the things you really want to do. Yeah, and in our days, machines can do very precise watches. Nearly less handwork is needed, but if you put it there, you have to speak about it. Otherwise, nobody understands it.
Okay, that brings me to the final thought, and I want to direct this at you, Lorenzo, because you and I share a lot of similarities in our jobs, even if we get there in a different way. This idea of taking the word craftsmanship out into the public so that people can learn about Swiss and German watchmaking at high levels. How do we do that best?
That's the challenge for sure. There's not one single answer. I would say there's so many different touch points nowadays, but it's the challenge of the industry is even more nowadays than we are submerged with digital information and content everywhere. We need to find a way to target the next generation also and transforming the narrative of authenticity and craftsmanship. These words are used a lot in the industry and sometimes overused. So it's also the trust level that a brand can give to its customers or just to an audience. And sometimes it needs the help also from other creators of content. We talk a lot of influencers and so on, but also institutions. I think we're also here thanks to the FHH. So the FHH could also bring this level of knowledge and educate without being too patronizing. But we need to also educate the audience. And I think it's a crucial time nowadays that we're with all this social media and the level of digital information. We need to prove that okay, there's another way to learn. It could be on social media, but you have to take the time. It's the value of this industry and of this product. And that's how you talk about craftsmanship, putting people in front of the camera as well, or doing talks like this. But also, again, a lot of brands talk about the watchmaker, but we don't necessarily see them. So creating this bridge between the customers or just the people interested with watches and the people behind these watches is probably the most important aspect and the challenge of the industry.
It is a challenge, especially for the companies, and I find both of your companies aren't giant PR machines. You let your products do your talking for the most part. But interestingly here at the Tutima booth, if anyone's interested, there is a watchmaker there demonstrating, and I think that is a perfect way to actually bring craftsmanship out into the world, but only for people who come to these sorts of things. Serge, how do you handle it?
I think at the end it comes down to the passion of people like you journalists, comes down to the passion of collectors, comes down to the passion of watchmakers. And I think as long as we have that passion, we can also spread the word. Yeah. Like if you do a job, I think it's in any job, if you don't do the job with passion, you won't succeed. And we see this among the collectors, they talk so much about details. Yeah. With ARMIN STROM, it's the craftsmanship, it's the innovation. With other brands, it's just mechanical watches, but there's passionate people spreading the words among the social media. Collectors groups sit together and talk whole evenings about watches. Yeah. I mean, you have to imagine this, that you travel someplace and you get invited by a group of people you meet for the first time and you spend a whole evening just talking about mechanical watches. Yeah. And then go into details and talking about how are we doing that 45-degree angle on that particular part. There are people out there that are interested in such things, and I think that's the nice part of the whole industry, of the watch industry. And when it comes to craftsmanship, I'm very positive that there is not enough passion out there that this will survive. Yeah.
Well, I would say we've pretty much extended our time here. We did leave some time for questions and answers. We have such an interesting panel up here today, and that was such a great topic. Thank you all so much for sharing your insights. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Maybe not. Andy.
Yes, yeah, I had already one.
Okay, she's already.
Hello. Thank you for the talk. That was great and very insightful and informative. My question is, I mean, both ARMIN STROM and Tutima Glashütte are, at the high end in price and in production. What do you think should be the message, though, for brands and companies in terms of expressing and communicating craftsmanship who are doing so in watches at a higher production and volume level? How should they be talking about craftsmanship in watchmaking at scale?
I don't know. I think if you look larger, if we take Rolex, they don't talk at all about this. It's a different topic. You don't buy a Rolex because of craftsmanship. I think each brand has a different philosophy, a different reason to exist. And with ARMIN STROM, part of it is craftsmanship, part of it is innovation. There's other brands they purely talk about innovations. It's definitely good if every brand spreads the word, as long as they do some craftsmanship on a watch. There's multiple channels to do so.
Clear answer. I have a clear answer. So I think the most important thing is that you talk only about things you understand. So for me, it's a shock if I get a presentation of a watch company, a watch brand. They show me a minute repeater, tourbillon, and they have no background. The people speaking about this product, I ask them, that's a flying tourbillon. Who invented it? No idea. What's the special thing about a flying tourbillon? No idea. So, and if you want to sell a product for hundreds of thousands of euros or Swiss francs, you have to bring the spirit, the mindset, and then it's fine. I think you can speak about small angles if you know exactly if the angle must be parallel exactly on the part or it has to move from 32 to 38, but you have to to explain and to understand why you make exactly the things like it is. I think that's the most important thing. Speak about, and if you do it in a technical way, that's also fine, but don't produce something you have no idea about. That's not craftsmanship.
True, absolutely agree. It comes back, it relates back at the end of the day to trust, the trust you can offer to the people interested in your product, and that's probably the challenge again of the coming years and the connection with the next generation. It's the trust level. So I would say a no bullshit approach would be the most important way to target the new audiences. I like what you said as well regarding the fact that being honest with the work that has been done with handmade, and also the ones that are machine made. So this will create the trust needed to increase the business, but also the overall industry and the communication around it. So yeah, definitely speak the truth and talk about what you know.
And craftsmanship is working. It's working by your hand. We are not artists. We do watches, we do precise timepieces, we do it well. And art is the customer, the journalist, looking at our products. But we produce craftsmanship, and for the audience, it could be art. I think that's a big difference.
Was that good?
Thank you.
Anyone else with a question? Comment? Watch they want to show us? Okay. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.